So, you want to sport some wicked magical tattoos? Maybe just give them the old Taparunski to cast. Possibly imbue your friends with tattoos that they can use. I've got something I want to show you.
Dun 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 dun. B-sides!
Hello, and welcome to Pathfinder B-Sides. I am your host, Professor Phoenix, and today I want to show you the Tattooed Sorcerer, which is an archetype I used to dream about. Just imagine your party is surrounded by goblins, and you are all out of spells. The set now, you can tap a tattoo on your chest and boom! Fireball with selective spell on it. And now you aren't having to worry about your teammates, and you have been able to handle the situation pretty cleanly. At least that's how you would figure it would go down. Unfortunately, I've got a bit of bad news. But first, I'd like to direct you to our sister channel, SCD Play Games. It's where me and my friends all get together and play various games. If you've ever been interested in Warhammer, which is a space army game where, for instance, orcs power their weapons and equipment just by believing it will work. They think red cars go fastest, and they do, purely by the power of groupthink. Also, you've got a mechanical race of Terminators that resurrect on their own and are basically trapped within pyramids on ancient planets. If this kind of stuff tickles your pickle, you should definitely go check out the channel. Be sure to tell Platonic T Professor Phoenix sent ya. Winky face. Now, onward to greatness. Let's find out what the flavor text is from the D20 PFSRD for the Tattooed Sorcerer. The Tattooed Sorcerer uses colorful and intricate tattoos to enhance her magical powers. Wow, that is... Wow, very straightforward. I would have hoped for something that delivers a bit more background, or maybe a group that the first Tattooed Sorcerers used. Anyways, what we're going to go through next is going to be the Tattooed Sorcerer's class features. Starting off with Familiar Tattoo, which is a supernatural ability. A Tattooed Sorcerer gains a familiar as an arcane bond, as a wizard equal to her sorcerer level. Her sorcerer levels stack with any wizard or witch levels she possesses when determining the powers of her familiar. This ability does not allow her to have both a familiar and a bonded item. Unlike most familiars, her familiar can transform itself into a tattoo that she carries in her flesh. Transforming into a tattoo or back to normal familiar form is a move action for her familiar. In tattoo form, the familiar looks like a stylized version of itself, but does not count as a creature separate from the Tattooed Sorcerer. In tattoo form, it continues to grant its special familiar ability, but otherwise has no abilities and can take no actions except to transform from tattoo into creature. A familiar tattoo cannot be erased or dispelled. This ability replaces her first level bloodline power. I mean, okay, so like this is pretty nice if I do say so myself, alright? Like, considering most first level powers stink, this one has quite a bit of versatility, especially if you end up using a familiar archetype as well. The familiar you pick will not only give you static bonuses to skills or HP, but they can also be used in character, maybe helping you escape a prison when you smuggle them in. Or maybe you just enjoy the idea of having a tattoo that your familiar is always with you. Flavor-wise, this is amazing and can add to your roleplay around the table. Best of all, when you don't need your familiar, it's not like they disappear into nothingness, forgotten behind you in that cave you explored 4 sessions ago. Instead, it can be assumed, once you are done with them, you let them rejoin you as you continue to adventure. like they crawl up your hand and just like form themselves to your flesh. Just wild. At this point, it may be good to mention a few familiars I tend to love, and as of right now, I like the monkey familiar due to Aladdin, the raven due to Varsuvius in the Order of the Stick, and the turtle because I think turtles are pretty cool. Ultimately, you should pick an animal you can roleplay with longer than one session, and don't go based on only the bonus that they offer. Your skills will come along all on their own. Next, we've got Mage's Tattoo, which is an extraordinary ability. At first level, the Tattooed Sorcerer gains Mage's Tattoo as a bonus feat. If she doesn't have spell focus, she may choose which school of magic her Mage's Tattoo enhances. This ability replaces her Eschew Material bonus feat. Now, I know what you're thinking. Professor Phoenix, you mispronounced Eschew Materials pretty hard right there. And, see, I get it, but also, like, it's either Eschew or Eschew, but, like, the way it's spelled is super busted, so, like, I'm gonna need you guys to tell me how you pronounce it, because otherwise I'm just never gonna be there. But aside from that, it's pretty cool feat and ability, you know, flavor wise. You pick a school of magic you like using and boost that DC by 1. You also gain a special cantrip and can only use it 3 times a day. Out of all of them, illusion, enchantment, and transmutation seem to be the most useful, and the best options to gain that +1. I'm not gonna lie, the loss of Eschew Materials hurts my feelings, but in the long run, as long as you drop 10 gold in every town you go to, or at least once a session after talking with your GM, you should be good. I think the only time I've ever had to count components is when I needed something like a tuning fork from another plane for plane shift, or diamond dust for resurrection. Other than that, you should be solid. Yeah. Next, we've got Bloodline Tattoos, which is an extraordinary ability. Whenever a tattooed sorcerer gains the Bloodline spell, a new tattoo manifests on her body to represent this spell. Her Bloodline spells are always enhanced by her Mage's Tattoo feat, even if they don't match the school to which her Mage's Tattoo belongs. Now, I've got to say, this one's a little underwhelming. Flavor-wise, it's alright. You could tap the spell on your shoulder, for instance, and use that for flavor as you cast your spell. The big thing here is that you get to add +1 to the save DCs of your spells, but I mean, that could be useful. But also, you don't trade anything out for this, so, like, yay, I suppose. Next is Create Spell Tattoo, which is a supernatural ability. At 7th level, a tattooed sorcerer can create a spell tattoo once per day with a single touch as a standard action. The recipient of the spell tattoo must be willing to receive the spell tattoo. If she gives the spell tattoo to herself, it does not count against the regular limit of magic tattoos she can have. The spell tattoo must be of a spell that she knows that has no material focus component. She can maintain one spell tattoo created by this ability at a time. If she uses this ability again, the previous tattoo fades away. The spell tattoos she creates with Inscribe Magic Tattoo do not count against this limit. She can use this ability twice per day at 11th level and 3 times per day at 15th level. This ability replaces the Bloodline feat gained at 7th level. And here's where my problem begins with this archetype. First of all, your spells are most likely arcane, and if you give a tattoo to someone else in your party who doesn't cast arcane spells, has the spell on their list, and don't have the ability score to cast the spell based on your casting stat, which is most likely going to be Charisma, unless you went Imperial Bloodline, then this ability is moot. You in fact lose a Bloodline feat in the process, which could have been useful, seeing as 7th level is almost near the end of the campaign in most adventure paths. If the person you give the tattoo to can't activate the spell tattoo you have given them, then what's the point? Flavor-wise, it's cool. I understand what they were trying to do, and honestly, if they had just added the words, the recipient can use the spell like they meet the requirements, would have made this ability much more useful. As is, you can basically give other sorcerers the tattoo, and that might be it. Ugh. Next up, Enhanced Magical Tattoo, which is a supernatural ability. At 9th level, the tattooed sorcerer can pick any one spell she knows for which she has a mage's tattoo feat. The spell must be one that lacks focus components and costly material components. She can now use that spell as a spell-like ability once per day. The spell-like ability is not enhanced by her mage's tattoo, but it functions as +2 caster levels above her sorcerer caster level. Whenever she gains a bloodline power at a later date, she may change this spell-like ability to another qualifying spell. This ability replaces the 9th level bloodline power. Okay guys, rant time. Again, I've got to say, I'm not that big of a fan of this ability either. You basically get to use one of your bloodline spells as a spell-like ability without the bonus DC that you would normally get, but you do gain an extra 2 caster levels for that spell specifically. This would be useful for an ability that lasts for a level-based duration, or lets you target more stuff per level, or has some other level-based modifier. Unfortunately, there aren't many spells that would have been worth your 9th level bloodline power most of the time. If we went with the most iconic bloodline, the Draconic bloodline, that would remove your breath weapon for any of your bloodline spells, like Mage Armor, Resist Energy, Fly, or Fear. Sure, you can update this ability every time you gain a new bloodline spell, but I don't see it truly making a difference for spell resistance, Form of the Dragon, or Wish. You gain a few extra minutes with Form of the Dragon, but is that really worth the dragon's breath? Okay, in all fairness, I do love being a dragon, so maybe, alright? Ultimately, it's up to you what you really want to do, but I feel like the spirit of this archetype got away from what we actually got. Furthermore, I would hate for you to pick this archetype because you think, oh yeah, I can get magical tattoos and give them to my party, and they can cast spells if they need to, because no, they can't in 95% of scenarios. Most NPCs you'll meet that are sorcerers are either above your level so they can handle themselves, or they're your enemies. Now, just because I haven't been in a game with a lower level caster with the same class as me, doesn't mean you won't be in that situation. As always, I urge you to speak with your GM to see how useful this could be to you. Also, read up on how you can cast from scrolls. That's super important. Your tattoos cast like scrolls. They are still subject to disruption, so be sure you are away from your enemy before you activate them unless you cast on the defensive, which is totes a thing. Good luck though. For me, it feels like if I got the choice to either run this archetype or play a standard sorcerer, I would probably go with a normal sorcerer. You lose entirely too much to make this archetype worth it, and for me, that's a tall glass of hell nah. I give this archetype a 4 out of 10. It sounds cool, and with some tweaking between you and your GM, it could be worth it, especially if you are able to talk them into letting your teammates use the tattoo, as long as they know the command word, just like a wand or some other magical item. So, what are your thoughts on the Tattooed Sorcerer? Have you played this archetype before? If so, tell me about it. What's the most badass moment in play with it? Am I wrong about something? Did I miss some hidden advantage to this? I mean, you could always join the Discord and argue with me about it a bit and maybe help me see the light. Or better yet, subscribe and argue with me on other topics I bring up for discussion. The best thing is, you could play your character your way and then tell me about it down the line. No matter what you do, you guys take it easy and keep gaming.